Welcome. My name's Logan Ishimina. I'm the Director of Chapter Operations here at Alpha Sigma Phi. And welcome to our 2024 Chapter Advisor Kickoff. We're excited to have you guys here as we start up the spring. We just want to get all of our advisors on a call for the next hour or so to discuss some deadlines coming up, some things we want you guys to be focusing on. Bring up Grand Chapter coming up in August, and really get you guys going as we start the semester. And if you guys have questions at the end, we're happy to answer those, or I can stay on and answer any questions that you guys might have. But welcome. Thank you guys all for staying with us for the next hour. And hopefully we have a great spring semester. I know we have advisors that have been advisors for 3-4 years, maybe even more than that. We have some that were just hired within the last few weeks, last month or so. So we definitely have a big range of paid advisors on this call. So we're happy to have all of you. But because we have some new advisors, I'd love to do some introductions of those that are on our staff. We actually do have a new staff member that joined us in November, so we'd like to introduce him. But I think we will just jump. Rick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Logan. Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Courage. I'm a graduate of Indiana University. I myself am not an Alpha Sig. I'm actually a member of Phi Kappa Sigma. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you, especially including the 30 CCAs that I work with. Thank you so much, Adrian. I get that a lot. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. Cade.
Yeah, just like Logan said, my name's Kate Gamble, Assistant Director, Chapter Operations, overseeing mostly Southeast chapters that we have within Alpha Sigma Phi, initiated back in 2018 at the Murray State chapter.
Thank you. Sam.
Thanks, Logan. Hey, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces on this call, so it's good to see all of you who I've worked with previously or that I've met through other fraternity avenues, such as conferences, traveling for work, and all of that. So it's good to see you all. I'm on the chapter operations team as well. I'm a graduate from our Chico State chapter out in California, and I'm looking forward to a really good spring.
Awesome. Kevin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule for jumping on tonight. My name's Kevin Finkler. Been on staff for about 2.5 years now. I'm from our Nevada chapter, Theta Eta. Was initiated back in 2017. I primarily work with our Midwest groups, so seeing a lot of the familiar faces on here as well, too. And looking forward to a great spring semester and looking forward to tonight.
Awesome. Greg.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see everyone tonight. Greg Maida, Assistant Director, Chapter Ops. Thanks for being here.
Please. Tabitha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tabitha Sarko. I serve as the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives. And so you get emails from me about Grand Chapter and officer training. And I have been on staff for about 11.5 years. Nice to see everybody.
Matt.
Good evening. My name is Matt Humberger. I'm the Vice President Chief Operating Officer for Alpha Sig. I have been on staff since 2009. There's also, I wanted just to quickly mention, I know Logan is going to be planning on sticking around after the call's over. There's going to be a little support group if folks are struggling with Nick Saban retiring. Logan will talk through any feelings folks are having afterwards if need be. But it's great to be here. And
it's auto muted.
Talking to you guys.
Yeah, for like an hour before we.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. And then last but not least, Gordy.
Sure. Gordy Heminger, the President and CEO for Alpha Sigma Phi, and I have also been in this role since 2009.
Great. Well, we're going to kick it off with Gordy and Matt, kind of giving us the state of the fraternity at this point and kind of giving us a charge before we break into a few different things. So Tabitha, if you want to start the PowerPoint.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Logan. Matt will pipe in if I miss anything, but you're going to be hearing from Matt later on. So I'm going to do the lion's share of this, initial part. Let me first say thank you to every single one of you, not only for being here tonight, but for your role as an advisor. Several years ago, we created what's called a success pyramid for a chapter. And if there's 5 components of a chapter and they're hitting all of them, it's going to be a really successful chapter. And brotherhood is the most important rung. That's the base of everything. If a chapter doesn't have a good brotherhood, it's probably not going to recruit or do some other things. So brotherhood, recruitment, number 2, accountability 3, shared vision 4. But you can back up tab. I've not talked about that yet. But number 5 is advisor, and having everyone have a very good chapter advisor. There's very few successful chapters in the country, in North America, that do not have a successful chapter, do not have a good, engaged chapter advisor. So I appreciate all the work you're doing, you did in the fall, you're going to do in the spring, because it is making a difference. And there's no question about it. Our better chapters have engaged advisors. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what some of our organizational priorities are. And then I think that will be important, as it will help shape how you mentor, guide, coach, influence, motivate, and inspire the undergraduate men in Alpha Sigma Phi. So as I mentioned, number 1 is brotherhood. We view that as the base of everything. And so all of the chapters should have developed a spring calendar that should be robust and purposeful, that has a great flurry of brotherhood activities, many without alcohol, hopefully. And this is where you should be coaching and reminding the chapter about this calendar and working with them to enhance the calendar. Because what's really interesting is we did a survey of all the new members, and we had about 2,000 new members who joined Alpha Sigma Phi in the fall semester. And of the new members that completed our survey, about a third, so nearly a third of the new members, said their chapter lacked a robust brotherhood calendar. So I have to believe that plays a role into the retention of new members. That plays a role into the willingness of new members to pay, to run for office, and to be engaged. So when nearly a third say their chapters do not have a robust and meaningful brotherhood calendar, I think it's a real opportunity. And I think for the spring, we can certainly improve in terms of our coaching of our undergraduates on that. Number 2 would be recruitment. If chapters aren't growing, they're dying. And so we want all of our chapters to be A, critical mass, but B, what critical mass looks like for each campus is different. And we should be at or above the average fraternity size on each campus. And so how are we going to do it? And you're going to hear more about recruitment later, but it's following our Alpha Sigma Phi recruitment philosophy, which is a focus on relationships and connections, not on big events, not on rush weeks, but it's meaningful one-on-one connections, introduce folks to small groups, and then the chapter. Something that, we hear all the time, the chapter doesn't have money for rush. You don't need money for one-on-one relationships, or certainly not a lot. Number 2 is utilizing Chapter Builder and taking advantage of our Fired Up certification training. I would say if any of you have not been certified in the Fired Up recruitment training, I would encourage you to do that. And I'd encourage you to encourage your chapter council to do that as well. I think that'll help you as you coach and advise the undergraduates. Number 3 is all the chapters, when they were doing their brotherhood calendar, they also did a recruitment calendar. So just like the brotherhood calendar, the execution is key. Most of the time when chapters are not having success, one of 2 things are at play. Number 1, they have no plan. Or number 2, they're not following the plan. In this case, they should all have a plan. So now it's, will we execute and follow that plan? And that's where you can play a key role in terms of reminding, coaching, and motivating them with that plan. And then lastly, it's building a pipeline of leads, which is a names list. And the single biggest driver of a names list is our TBTM scholarship. And that is something that in March and April, you could be working with the chapter to make sure that they implement. And the website has a whole lot of information about the TBTM scholarship, but this is something where chapters are like, oh, we don't know anyone. This will help build that pipeline of new members, build that pipeline of leads. So the TBTM scholarship, if you remember nothing else from a recruitment standpoint, remember this is a resource that will drive names to the names list for a chapter. And then new member referrals. Every single new member that joins Alpha Sigma Phi submits the name of at least one person who they think would be a good member of the fraternity. And so we had about 1,600 leads in the fall semester of people that new members said would be a good member of their chapter. And of all of those leads, I believe 3 joined, which tells me that that is a real missed opportunity. So, you know, if a chapter hasn't achieved its recruitment goals in the spring, I would certainly ask them about the leads that were submitted in the fall and the leads that will be submitted in the spring, because this is another untapped resource that is provided for the chapter. So 1,600 names, 3 join. We should be getting 10 or 20% minimum of those leads. Those are hot leads. So a good opportunity to coach the president and the VP of growth. All right, now we're ready to move on to the next slide. All right, finances and operations. And so the third part of the spring planning was preparing a budget. So all the chapters should have a budget, and now it's to bill and collect. And that's sometimes where the gap is, that the chapters wait too long to bill, and so they're not collecting appropriately. So a good coaching tool will be referring to the budget and encouraging the chapters to make sure they're billing, ideally before the spring term starts. Number 2, utilizing Greek Bill. That's a service we provide for the chapters. It's to help them collect from their members, take a lot of the responsibility away from the VP of Finance and allow a third party to provide assistance. And then lastly, coming up January 15th, so next Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it happens to be, the second installment of the fraternity fees are due. And this largely covers health and safety, the liability insurance and whatnot. So Jeremy Reed and Logan and his team, they know who's paid and who hasn't paid. If you don't know if your chapter's paid, I'd reach out to Logan or your supervisor or Jeremy and figure it out and try to work with the VP of Finance to come up with a plan to get paid to pay their bill by the deadline or to get on a payment plan. So the key is we want something paid by the 15th, ideally at all, but we need to see progress. 4 is Grand Chapter, and you're going to hear more about Grand Chapter in a little bit. But you know what I wanted to say is this is our only in-person leadership conference of the year, so it's critical. It's important. It's not optional. It's not something that somebody can say, "I just don't feel like going." Every president has to attend. So what you can do as an advisor is before the chapter has elections in the spring, you can remind the chapter, if you're going to run for president, you have to be able to attend Grand Chapter in Louisville in August. If you can't attend because of an internship, a co-op, your grandma's birthday party, your dad's retirement party, your cousin's wedding, you can't run for president. You have to attend Grand Chapter if you're the president. And another one of the 9 H officers has to attend. So at a minimum, but we're going to have over 900 undergraduates in attendance. So the way to look at this is 2 is the bare minimum, but the more people that attend, the better the chapter is going to be. There's a direct correlation between attendance at leadership program and chapter performance. So the more men that can be encouraged to attend, the better it's going to be for the chapter. And we have the lowest ticket cost of any men's fraternity. So no other men's fraternity has a lower ticket price for their summer convention than us. So we intentionally make it low because we want people to attend. And then it ties in with officer installation in the term. And so we're starting to see, you know, some chapters try to morph to what the campus norm is. We don't want campus norm. We want to be better than the rest. And that means that our H officers serve an academic year term. They're installed in April. And we do that for many, many, many reasons. Number one, we really don't want freshmen to be in leadership roles. That makes a bad experience for the freshmen. It makes a bad experience for the chapter. And so if you have it academic year, these new members who join in the fall can't be elected to a position, can't be elected right away to a position. They've got to at least be in the chapter for a year. That makes a world of difference. So there's a lot of reasons behind it. And I honestly believe if we could go back 100 years and design something from scratch, every fraternity would have officer elections academic year, not calendar year. So as you're working with chapters, let's remind them that this is when we have elections. Installation happens in April. All right, moving along. And then last but not least, in terms of priorities, health and safety. And so all new members should complete Tightrope. It's our online education program. So we had a good percentage in the fall, not where we'd like it to be, but this is really important to keep everybody safe. And then just a reminder about our initiation timeline. So number one, we don't have a pledge ceremony. So if you hear pledge ceremony, some questions should be asked. We have no pledge ceremony. Scenes 1 and 2 of our initiation should happen within 7 days of the new member class being finalized. So another good thing, if you're not hearing anything about an initiation process starting within a week of the new member class being finalized, that should raise some questions. Then 35 days later, including breaks, so spring break, President's Day weekend, doesn't matter, scenes 3 and 4 of the initiation should happen. And then you might hear about this thing called Pinnacle Week. Pinnacle Week should happen before scene 5, which is for the graduating seniors. So our initiation ceremony happens in 3 parts. The first 2 parts happen within 35 days of each other, and the last part happens as people are ready to graduate. So that's a process. Some chapters are holding on to old traditions that aren't traditions anymore. So no pledge ceremony, 35 days, 3 parts, three nights. All right, moving on to a team that can help you is a chapter council. And so this is people designed to relieve some of the work for you and move it to somebody else. So our focus is for every chapter to have a financial advisor, growth advisor, and retention advisor. And once those are filled, then the next 6 positions on the chapter council could be filled. But, we really want to focus on those 3 primary advisors in the spring semester. So if your chapter council doesn't have one of these 3 people, these would be great people to recruit. It could be alums, it could be other fraternity men, other sorority women, could be faculty, professors on campus, people you work with, family. It doesn't matter. We want people who are going to be good mentors and coaches for the undergraduates. All right, as we wrap up with the last 2 slides, from a foundation standpoint, because Alpha Sigma Phi has 3 entities, fraternities 1, foundations 2. Founders Day Challenge, we just wrapped it up. Thank you to all of you who donated. We raised over $650,000. And why this is important is this money provides the grant to the fraternity, which is why we're able to keep the cost of attending our summer leadership programs so low. So to all of you who gave, thank you. Our goal is every year to have every advisor, every chapter council member give something. The amount isn't as important as your participation. So we appreciate everybody who did something in 2023. And the next Founders Day Challenge will kick off in September 1st of 2024. Lastly, from a foundation, every chapter has an endowment. And this money in this endowment can be used to cover the educational programming fee, the cost for the summer leadership program, Grand Chapter, provides scholarships, the TBTM scholarship. So Sam Harris's email is there. Sam can tell you how much is in that endowment, how to use the endowment, but this is a way to provide some financial assistance to the chapter for qualified educational expenses. And as we wrap up with Clevin, this is our housing entity formed in 2016. The goal is to provide a shared living environment for brothers to strengthen the brotherhood. So there's over 50 Clevin properties. Our goal is for every chapter to become a Clevin property. So if you're advising a chapter with a house, it's not a Clevin property, I'd encourage you to encourage the undergraduates to connect with Nick Miller, whose email address is there, about becoming a Clevin property. It helps from a collection standpoint. It helps from a negotiation standpoint with landlords. It helps from a timeliness of repairs standpoint. And quite frankly, from a financial management and internal controls, it helps a lot. So this is a resource we have. Nick Miller's a good contact person there. So that at a high level is kind of some of the priorities, a little bit about the foundation, a little bit about housing. What I would say is that I would welcome at any time any of you to reach out to me with questions, ideas, concerns if you have concerns, and we'll try to get those resolved. Logan and his team, they're great resources, so utilize them, but certainly I'm always available as well. So I appreciate your time, and thanks, Logan, for inviting me.
Gordy, does anyone have any questions? Quick questions? Awesome. Thank you, Gordy. Cool. Well, we're going to move on to talk about Grand Chapter a little bit more. We're very excited about Grand Chapter this year. It's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. I assume all of you know about this information when you've been working with your supervisors, but we have The undergraduate tickets have now just gone live. So they can find that in the portal. I will show you how an undergrad can go in there and register to do so. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We expect to have over 1,000 Alpha Sigs there. It's going to be we're going to have a huge kickoff on that Thursday. It starts August 1st to the 4th. So on that 1st, during our kickoff, we're going to have it at the Churchill Downs racetrack. I believe, Tabitha, we're going to have it in the museum, correct?
Kentucky Derby Museum at Churchill.
Yeah. And it's going to be right there. We're going to do tours. We're going to have music, food, drinks. We're going to have a live jockey there to answer questions, sign autographs, do all of that. I think we have a lot of other things going on for the alumni that day as well. If you are interested as an alumnus as well, you can register now. That's also live. But Grand Chapter is going to be a lot of fun. But we want you guys to be a huge help in getting registrations in, and also making sure that the people that do register attend the program, are there on time, and are participating in everything that we have going on that weekend. So like I said, everything as far as tickets go are live now. The deadline to register is March 15th. You're going to start hearing from your supervisor a lot more over your next one-on-one, whether that's between now and like the 31st of January, about what that process should look like, how many guys you guys want to send, how to register, all of that. I'll show you guys. But ultimately, we want these guys to want to go. So the more you guys can drive Grand Chapter to the chapter, the better, rather than them just hearing from us trying to get registrations in. They could just kind of tone us out. So the more you guys can do to drive this, the better. The price is $300, no matter who you are as an undergraduate. But one thing that we're actually changing this year is we're no longer doing ticket packages. It's all individual sales. So when a brother goes in and registers, they actually have to put in a $50 deposit down as they register. And then the chapter will receive a $250 invoice for the rest of that ticket. So if you guys have questions with that, let us know. That invoice won't be due until May 15th. So the chapter doesn't have to worry about paying that right away. All that we're trying to do is have the member that registers put a little bit of money towards the ticket so that they understand it's a ticket for them and they're not just registering to make the chapter happy or make us happy. They're actually putting some leg in the game and stuff like that. So that's the one difference. I'm actually going to share my screen so that I can show you how the registration goes. So I'm logged in as a president currently, but any undergrad that has access to their portal can see this. But when they log in, we just want to make sure that they get to their welcome page. And if they scroll down, it's just right here, the Grand Chapter registration. They'll click on this. They'll first see where it's happening, the time, place, the cost and cancellation fee, and the policy that goes with that. They'll come in here to register. They'll fill out all their information, everything that we need from them. They'll pick which tracks that they want to participate in on that Friday and Saturday. And then if they want to get a t-shirt or join the Phi Society, they can do that as well. And then when they're ready to pay, they'll come in here and submit the registration. We will keep, if you guys have questions of who's registered, how many guys from your chapter have registered, just reach out to your supervisor. We can let you know. Definitely as we get closer to March 15th, this is going to be a huge priority for my team, and you guys will be hearing from us a lot. And during your guys' spring planning calls that you guys had in December, every chapter agreed to a goal as far as how many guys that they want to send. So we should try to stick to that goal. And during your next one-on-one with your supervisor, you'll go over that goal one more time, and you guys will stick to that, try to get as many guys to register, reach that goal or even more. And we'll try to get as many guys to Grand Chapter because we're very excited about this one. It's also in Louisville. It's in the middle of the country. It's finally very accessible to a lot of our chapters. So much easier to just drive. I know for maybe the East Coast or West Coast, it might be a little bit more difficult, but definitely like last year being in the Northeast, it was difficult for a lot of groups. Now it's going to be a lot easier. So we should try to take advantage of that opportunity. So does anyone have any questions as far as the Grand Chapter is concerned?
Hey, Logan, this is Kevin from West Georgia. How you doing, man? Happy New Year.
Good, Kevin. Good to see you.
Yeah, I got a quick question for you. So March 15th, I know my chapter is they're ready, like they're fired up, they want to go. They don't usually, that's usually, I think that's the first day of their spring break, right? Like they're gone from the 15th to the 24th, and then they usually go right into elections, right? So do we just do a placeholder? Do we just kind of put president, vice president, maybe like 4 different positions? Or I don't think I'm going to actually have the 4 names for you until a little bit later in March.
So I would just tell the chapter now, whoever wants to go should be willing to take on a position, or whoever takes on a position should know that Grand Chapter is an expectation. So if someone's wanting to run for president, they should be one of the guys that should be registering to go to Grand Chapter. So those are the conversations we should be having. Also, if you guys want to have elections earlier in the semester, we're fine with that, as long as you guys aren't switching the actual prudential boards until later, like in April. But if you guys want to know who will be taking over the position sooner, that go for it. That might make things actually easier to transition, make things easier to register for Grand Chapter, however you want to go about that.
Well, and I would just add, and Tabitha, you may have something else to add. I think that a couple of different questions that came in, just to echo I think the key thing there that Logan talked about was, I would 100% I'd have placeholders in, right? Like I understand obviously elections may not occur, until after the deadline for Grand Chapter, but ideally, in a perfect scenario, chapters are starting to get folks registered sooner rather than later, right? So let's get placeholders in, let's get spots selected, and if we need to change someone out for someone else after March 15th, we can certainly do that. What we don't want to have happen is after March 15th, us not have any availability anymore, and so we're not able to make some of the accommodations that folks want because we're at capacity or something like that. So for now, I think I hear people with the March 15th deadline. I saw a comment in the comment section as well, but I think let's focus on getting placeholders at a bare minimum in those spots to reserve your spot. And ideally, like Logan said, it's somebody who's planning on running, thinks they're going to run, but obviously if we need to make a change, we can. Also for Bo and Brian, yeah, the endowment can pay back those folks that put the $50 down. That's an easy reimbursement. I don't know, Tabitha, was there anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would just say for groups, I think probably sending 4 might be a little harder in this situation. But if a group is saying, hey, we want to send 12, I believe you could get 8 to 10 registered now. And so I would focus on that. I think it's a whole lot easier to come to Logan or to your supervisor and say, hey, we want to send 12. I can get 10 by March 15th. I just need a week for those other 2. It's obviously not ideal if everyone on this call does that. But if we have a few people that do that, I don't think that is a huge deal. It's not ideal, but it's not huge. But I think we could focus on, if you're sending double digits, who can we get registered? The other thing I would say is, The rooms are figured out for the educational tracks, and every single one of them has caps. And once that cap is hit, I can't put a person in that room because I'm not going to physically have room. And I can already tell you there are going to be some that I think are like going to fill up very quickly, especially like the Dr. Michael Brown sessions that are really, really popular in the summer. And so I would say if someone knows that they are going, we want them to sign up now, so that we can also ensure that they get the educational tracks that they're wanting to get.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just would say, like, we don't have one person running for president. I don't know, we have 3 people running. So we just need markers because that's not going to be done before the time our president's going to go. But when you have 3 people running for that position, because we want competition, then, we would know the one person who's going to run. And so we sign them up.
Yeah. Understandable. I think as long as you just communicate with us, we're happy to work with you. It's just when we're not hearing from any group and they're not registering, that's when we get worried. So
yeah. I think to add on that just briefly, I think that's a good opportunity to get those who obviously only one person is going to win. But if we already have, as suggested earlier, if we make it a requirement, say, for nominations that, hey, if you run for president, you have to be registered for a Grand Chapter. I think even if those members do lose, I think it's a valuable and a great experience for them to, go see, the larger national fraternity and be involved in some of the, different trainings of sorts. And, who knows? It could be maybe a sophomore that's running. They end up going to Grand Chapter and they are better prepared to run again the following year. So I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to, talk with your officers or your election, when that nominations come up and, have that be stipulated. And it's just a simple change for us to, change who is the president, who's not the president. If all of them registered, I think that's a, potential solution as well.
awesome. Well, if you have any other Grand Chapter related questions, you could put it in the chat and Tabitha can answer, or you could just message Tabitha directly. But I think we need to kind of shift into another thing. So Matt, if you want to start talking about executive leadership.
I'd love to. Yeah, there's still some questions coming in. So Tabitha, I appreciate you kind of keep an eye on the comment section, but if we can go to the PowerPoint and I will get going here. I think perfect. First, I'm just going to, Gordy obviously hit on a handful of items, and obviously he just wanted a few minutes with you all, I think, to talk about, the most important things that organizationally we're focusing on, right? And obviously we're diving into each of those a little bit more over the course of this hour. And one of those that I'm going to just dive a little bit more into, if you don't know me, recruitment is definitely something that I'm pretty passionate about. Those that do know me probably are like, oh, he's going to talk about recruitment again. But here we are. So really, really basic stuff. I just want to talk briefly about, as a reminder, the most important things, the things that we are really coaching our groups on, the things that we're coaching vice presidents of growth on, every resource we're sending out. It's really honing in on these items and only these items, right? We've really narrowed our recruitment philosophy down to just 5 or 6 things. First things first, obviously, every chapter should have a spring recruitment plan that you guys have worked closely with them on. Obviously, the content inside that plan is everything that's below here in these bullets. So if we're just working with our groups on executing those plans thoroughly, focusing beyond, like Gordy talked about, the events and things of that nature, but really honing in on where we're getting our leads and our pipelines and things of that nature, we should see success. So I think the key thing here is that we've got these plans, let's execute them. Let's not deviate from the plans. And if they're not as good as they should be, or if we're still working on them in some capacity, let's make some tweaks. But let's use that as sort of our guardrails for a successful spring. Gordy mentioned Chapter Builder. Obviously, it's a free service that we provide to all of our chapters. I really, 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 really would love to see every chapter utilizing Chapter Builder far more than they do. Our best chapters, and I promise you this, when it comes to recruitment, our best chapters utilize Chapter Builder in and out. It's basically a CRM for our chapters to keep all their names, update their names, send text messages, emails, calls. There's so many features that are available in Chapter Builder. If it's not something you're incredibly familiar with, please let your supervisor know. We can schedule a training. I don't know if I think we've talked about doing that at some capacity anyway. Very brief, give you the basics so you know how to at least log in and be dangerous. But in there, within Chapter Builder, every chapter really should have at least what we call 5 pipelines outside of what the IFC provides. So it's very common for an IFC to say, here's a no bids list, or here's rush week and what we have scheduled. Beyond that, where are we getting our names? So pipelines is really the first and almost kind of most important first step in successful recruitment. So at this point, it's January 10th. Every single chapter, we should be able to go into Chapter Builder and see how many names they have in Chapter Builder and give us an idea of how many pipelines that they're having. But we should have at least 5 or more. Obviously, to Better the Man Scholarship, which I'll just briefly touch on again, that's one pipeline. Another could be high schools that are nearby, high schools that some of our members attended that are within an hour, that they know guys from those high schools that are coming to school, where you all advise. It could be working through the residence halls or the honors colleges. There are so many different potential pipelines that we can be recruiting through classes that we really want to start with at least 5 or more pipelines. And then when it comes to leads, that's the names that we have going into the spring semester. So if we have no names right now, we're not in a good shape, but we can fix things and get things moving in a good direction. But in a good scenario, you really should have, as of today, going into this spring, about 10 to 15% or 10 to 15 times the goal that you all have as a chapter, right? So if the chapter wants to recruit 10 men, they should really have about 100 to 150 leads going into the spring. So that way they can be really selective, pick the best of the best, and still have a large spring recruitment class. And then obviously I'm not going to really dive into this, but once you go into Chapter Builder, if you're familiar with this will be common. If you aren't, it may not be. But DCBA is sort of verbiage that I would love us to start implementing. So pipelines, leads, and DCBA. DCBA is sort of the process of moving someone through the recruitment period of us essentially recruiting them, right? So D is a category, C is a category, B, A. A ultimately means we want them to be a member and they're excited about being an Alpha Sig. We pretty much have them. D is we just got a name. So now we've got to kind of move them through our process. Again, we could talk a lot more in depth about this and certainly provide more resources with Chapter Builder, but it's a phenomenal resource and I'd really love to see all of our groups utilizing it more. Fired Up certification is another resource outlet that we definitely want to encourage really all of our groups to utilize. It's essentially our education around the soft skills associated with recruitment. So rather than coming up with a 4-hour recruitment workshop that is, for all intents and purposes, going to utilize a lot of the same things that's in this Fired Up certification, we've said, okay, we're going to have this certification and cover the costs and allow every single undergraduate to use this program to go through, get certified, and have the soft skills and be in a position where they're able to refute the no and help kind of work through the process of getting guys interested and excited about joining Alpha Sig. So this is a online kind of video tutorial program. I believe it takes about 5 or 6 hours. If you aren't certified, you can do it. I would highly encourage you to do it because especially if we're trying to get our chapters to do this. But I think at this point, we've had it for about 1.5 years. And in total, there are about 1,500 members who have gotten through the certification. I'd love to see 1,500 at least go through this spring. And then next year, I'd love to see 2,000 or 3,000 because this is really, in terms of, again, the skill set, this is where it starts. This is where we learn and become more knowledgeable about how to communicate and kind of talk the recruitment process. And then the last couple of things, highly encourage, if you aren't doing so, this is all in the spring recruitment plan, so it should hopefully be happening, but I'd encourage that we break recruitment down into a team approach where everyone's involved in some capacity. You have a vice president of growth who's sort of the president of recruitment. And then you've got captains who are sort of on his committee. They each have members within each team, essentially. And you could divide the teams up. You could do a draft. You could divide them up by areas of interest. So maybe there's 7 guys that really like to go to the gym, and there's 7 guys that really like to go to the library, and they're going to be on their own teams because they're already doing those things already. And utilizing these teams to come up with their own names lists, their own pipelines, eliciting more leads, and ensuring that obviously everyone's playing a little bit more of a role in recruitment. I think it's really easy, and it still happens quite a bit, that when we look at successful recruitment, it's one guy, it's the vice president of growth who goes out and does everything. That's not replicable. That will not be a long-term recipe for success. This is. You might not get 100% participation, but if we can get 30 or 40 or 50% of the guys that have some element of responsibility when it comes to recruitment by being in these teams, having some small events within their teams, it's less intimidating than a large-scale event, certainly a lot more affordable as well, as Gordy mentioned. It's a great way to kind of go about things, and it spreads the responsibilities. And then I'd also encourage you to have some element of incentive. In a perfect scenario, I would suggest 3. You have a chapter incentive, that if the chapter achieves their chapter goal, what incentive would they like? What would motivate them to accomplish that goal? Same for team, and same for individually. Who's individually responsible for the most men joining Alpha Sig throughout the spring? If you have successes, the incentives, even if they're financial incentives, pay for themselves, and it becomes a great opportunity to reward brothers and the chapter as a whole for really working hard to accomplish some things. And then lastly, I think obviously the world we live in, social media plays such a critical role in what these, especially 18, 19, 20-year-olds are looking at and seeing. And so making sure that we're utilizing our social media effectively, and we're maintaining a level of professionalism throughout our social media. I think those are really important things. And that's honestly where a lot of people will go to learn about us initially. And so if we aren't utilizing Instagram and honestly some of those other social media outlets, I definitely encourage us to do so, and have that be incorporated in our plan. And then lastly, and we can and will talk more about this, but to Better the Man Scholarship, there's links here. So I think I saw somebody ask a question about getting this PowerPoint. I'm sure we can send it out afterwards. But that Fired Up certification is the link to actually go through the certification. The To Better the Man Scholarship link actually takes you to Alpha Sig's website. So if you go to our website, click on fraternity, you'll be able to see the TBTM scholarship. All of our resources are there. Actually, the application is there too, where somebody can fill it out, put your school, and it will automatically funnel into your chapter builder. Just like when you have 10 new members join Alpha Sig and they do those referrals that Gordy was mentioning earlier, when they submit a referral, we upload that immediately into Chapter Builder. So everything that we're trying to do is funneling into Chapter Builder. That's where obviously you go and you report your new members. So we're really in bed with Chapter Builder. Let's just be all in. And that's obviously what we're talking about earlier. But the To Better Man Scholarship, it's a March focus. Once spring recruitment slows down a little bit, focusing March and April and preparing for executing the To Better the Man Scholarship throughout the summer. For those that are familiar with SIGEP, they do a Balanced Man Scholarship. This is similar. We've had this forever. We just do not do it nearly as well as SIGEP does. But go to our website, take a look. If you have questions, let's talk about it. Certainly, we can revisit in February or March with your supervisors on how to execute that scholarship as effectively as you can. And then I just put this in here just to kind of revisit. So in my opinion, at least, and this is no disrespect for folks that work on college campuses, because everything's important. But in my opinion, things that do not directly result in new members joining is a rush schedule. So all of us have some sort of rush schedule. I personally would rather us never have a rush schedule, but we have it, and it's really important to our members. But it doesn't. I think I just want us to remember that doesn't directly relate to guys joining. IFC scheduled events. Those are really nice. Those are the guys that always joiners are going to go to. That historically is not who we are recruiting, or certainly not the majority of who we recruit. And then Excel spreadsheets. As much as I know, I love Excel. For those that know me, I live in Excel. It's not how we recruit anymore. We really need to be utilizing Chapter Builder. So those are a couple different components of recruitment that I just wanted to chat briefly about. And obviously your supervisors will continue to have those conversations throughout the spring, with you.
You need to add recruitment
related to recruitment, let's just put them in the chat. And when I get done, I will answer them because I want to keep us going. or if somebody else on staff sees a question and can answer it, just go ahead and answer it. But I'm going to keep just trucking along because I want to be sensitive to our time. So I'm going to be very, very brief here. But this is a new thing. I've emailed all of you about this over the course of the last few weeks. I just want to make sure I can explain it. This is, in my opinion, maybe the most important thing that's here for the hour plus that we have together, but that's just my opinion. Okay, Executive Leadership Institute. We're the only fraternity in the country or sorority that I know of that does something like this. Is it essentially our hiring model? It is how we're going about hiring our future staff to work at Alpha Sig. But what we're doing is we're providing a personal and professional development program for ideally the highest caliber guys in Alpha Sig. Essentially, there will be 3 cohorts: a sophomore cohort, a junior cohort, and a senior cohort. Their names are listed below. There are no more than 10 guys will be in each of these cohorts, but the purpose behind each cohort is slightly different, and I'll share them briefly. But there's 2 kind of prongs to this. One is they'll have an executive coach that works with our staff, has worked with our staff for about 5 or 6 years. His name's Dr. Michael Brown. Some of you probably know him. He will work exclusively with each cohort, provide them with personal and professional development while they're an undergraduate, sophomore, junior, senior year, that's going to help them not only while they're an undergraduate, but also when they graduate, and help prepare them for success in life. It's stuff he's talking to our staff about. He will be talking to guys as a sophomore and a junior and so on and so forth. And then also there's some great opportunities to connect. These folks that are in this Executive Leadership Institute will get to go to our summer program via scholarship that's paid for by us. They'll be able to intern at our summer program. They'll be able to attend our all board meeting, meet our board members for the fraternity, the foundation, Clevin, and really get to see the fraternity in the big picture a little bit more. And they're also obviously going to have the shared experience with other guys in the cohort as well that ultimately will lead to them graduating and having a job at Alpha Sig. So it's essentially interviewing to have a job while they're a freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever, but also entering into this cohort experience where they're going to get some great executive coaching throughout the remainder of their college. Next slide. So I will be very, very brief. Each cohort, the sophomore cohort, it's called Discover Yourself. During this time period, executive coach is going to work with you on, imagine you're a sophomore in college. Right now, we're interviewing people. We have about 40 applications, and I'm in the process today, yesterday, tomorrow, for the next 2 weeks. I'm interviewing folks for the ELI. The sophomores, they're freshmen now. By the time we interview them and they get accepted jobs, they'll start in April of this year. There'll be an introductory call, and then they'll really take off next year. So freshmen currently are applying for the sophomore program. Sophomores are applying for the junior, so on and so forth. But sophomore year, we're going to talk about learning more about who you are. What are you passionate about? Learning what impact do you want to make on your campus that you're on currently. There's quarterly meetups that will be virtual with this cohort and Dr. Michael Brown. And then these guys will also get to attend our summer program for free between their sophomore and junior year. The junior cohort's called Develop Yourself. So now we've discovered who we are. Now we're starting to develop who we are. Executive coach Michael Brown is going to work with this cohort. So if you're a sophomore, you advance to the next one. You're in this through graduation, obviously. Junior year, we're going to talk more about how to be the most well-rounded person you can, learning more about all the different dimensions of life that our executive coach refers to pretty regularly, helping you grow into who you want to be. There are bi-monthly interactions in this cohort, so a little bit more frequently. They'll have a February face-to-face interaction with sort of a brotherhood retreat at that all board meeting that I mentioned previously. So get to meet all this really important Alpha Sigs that help advance the organization. And then there'll also be a staff intern at our summer program between their junior and senior year. So a little bit more staff exposure, a little bit more insight into the fraternity and how we operate. And then their senior year, we call this Distinguish Yourself. During their senior year, they're going to learn about how to be a next level professional. For our staff that's on this call, that's stuff we're talking about now. Guys that are 25, 30, 35, 40, we're talking about having these conversations with guys who are 21, getting ready to graduate college. It's a phenomenal leadership opportunity and experience, I believe, that will culminate, obviously, in these guys being really, really, really set up for success in their careers post-college. So there'll be 2 meetups their senior year, culminating in February, coming to our headquarters, getting to see Carmel, and kind of preparing for life after college. So those are the 3 kind of buckets that this cohort process entails. Interviews, applications, what I will say, first of all, is applications are still live on My Alpha Sig. There's a direct link here, but if you log into My Alpha Sig, you see staff applications. We are, like I said, currently interviewing folks. Like I said, we have about 40 applications. This is the first year we're doing this. So we're going to hire for all the cohorts this year. And whatever vacancies we have, we'll likely continue to hire to fill these cohorts. But then eventually we will only be hiring for that sophomore cohort. So what I've talked to, and when anytime I zoomed into a chapter over the course of the last couple of months or talked to undergraduates, this is really the best opportunity to be a part of this, because it doesn't matter what year you are, you could be a part of this program. Eventually, probably in the next 6 or 9 months, that won't be the case. You'll have to be a freshman that will be applying for the sophomore cohort, because the rest will be at capacity. So this is a little bit of our timeline. Final round interviews will be here in Carmel, February 22nd to the 24th. We call that sort of interview weekend. They get to see the headquarters, meet all the employees that are currently here, see what it would be like to live in Indianapolis, and kind of get a feel for whether it to be a fit that they'd be interested in. And then, as I said, the institute itself would begin with an introductory call in April and then progress, beyond there. So what I will say is that although we are in the middle of interviewing, I just talked with our staff, and I'd love to see a handful more applications come in over the course of the next week or so. So if you take this information, what I would just ask is you think about in your chapter, who are a couple guys, sophomores, freshmen, juniors, maybe even guys that are getting ready to graduate, because obviously we'll hire those as well. They won't be a part of this Executive Leadership Institute. They would just be coming to work on staff. But who are guys that would benefit from this experience, have some of the leadership qualities that we look for, right? Maybe they're a current officer, or they're in their pledge class, they're the president of their pledge class, who knows? But think of some people, have a conversation with them over the course next couple of days, if you could, and encourage them to apply for this, because I just think it's a phenomenal opportunity. I appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Matt. And I think Matt mentioned this. We will be sending you guys all the slides that you're seeing. And then also we're recording this call as well that we'll send your way too. Greg, you are up.
Slides necessarily follow along with. But to reiterate some things that Gordy talked about before with finances, we are coming up on our first due date of the year, January 15th. It's a Monday. Right now we're sitting at about 20 to 30% of our chapters having paid anything of that 115 invoice. So still a lot of ground to be made up there. All your chapters that you oversee should have been billing the members going into the winter break, and then subsequently before they get back to campus here either next week or the week after. So the chapters have had almost over a month to be collecting from the chapter and the rest of the brothers. Really no excuses that guys haven't paid up to this point. So let's make sure that you're following up with the vice presidents of finance particularly, and also the presidents, and making sure that the finances are coming in, dues are getting paid, and everyone is staying on track. If chapters haven't paid, or if brothers haven't paid up to this point, those funds might not necessarily be available by Monday, and probably only be available later next week. So let's make sure that the conversations are being had. The other side of it, on February 15th, if your chapter still has any remaining balance left over from the fall new member class, that will be due on February 15th, which I believe is a Thursday. So please make sure that the new members that the chapter brought in from the fall are staying on track with paying the remaining balance of, hopefully not the whole $500, but at least $250. Then bringing us into March, on March 15th, the spring new member invoice, the first half will be due then. So as we talked about recruitment, chapters will be starting that soon. Let's make sure that the new members are getting $250 in, or the whole $500 in by that March 5th timeframe. That way the money's available to be paid on March 15th. Nothing due on April 15th, but then on May 15th, the second half of the spring new member invoice is due, and subsequently, if there's any other outstanding balances that the chapter hasn't paid off by this time, those are all going to need to be paid by that May 15th deadline. Anything after May 15th will become debt that the chapter will have to cover in the following year, so the 24-25 semester. So let's ensure that if there are plans in place, or if there is large outstanding balances, I should say, there's a plan in place to have that figured out between your staff liaison about a payment plan to bring down that overall balance. with chapters having a lot of time over the break, or maybe time left on the break, let's make sure that everyone is taking care of their finances accordingly. We also talked about the grand chapter finances, but that will be, we can elaborate that later on. But for everything with the chapter finances, everything's current on the chapter statements. If there's any invoice on there that you don't know or what it's for, or you need other clarification, reach out to your staff liaison and they'll be able to help explain what it is. But everyone's chapter statement, or every chapter statement, should be accurate as of right now. So let's make sure that the funds are coming in 5-6 days until the January 15th due date. So please make sure that your chapters are paying.
Any questions for Greg?
I guess a last point. If your chapters are not using Greek Bill to its fullest in terms of having members pay through there, please make sure that your vice president of finance is going in and using the chapter collected section of Greek Bill in order to make the updates needed. That is, if guys are not utilizing the system, we do not know what your financial stability or financial success looks like, and that will help us enable payment plans to go into place. So let's make sure that if the guys are paying outside of the system, we're using that chapter collected side of things.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Kevin, if you want to start going over annual report stuff.
Perfect. Yes. Right, further slides here. I want to first say thanks everyone for bearing with us as we're getting through. I'm going to be as quick as possible so you all can get on the rest of your nights. So I want to talk about annual report. Obviously, for those that have been an advisor, this is something that you're probably familiar with. For those that are new, this is going to be a first introduction. What is the annual report? The annual report, in essence, is a reflection of the chapter and yourself as an advisor. Its accomplishments, the progress, areas of improvement. What is it used for? Well, it's used for a couple of different things. It's used for us to have some sort of a snapshot, if you will, metrics of where we're at as a national fraternity. And we use that for a couple of different things to track how we do over the years, but also as well, too, as we expand to new campuses to let them know who we are as a fraternity. As well, it's award criteria. I think that's more oftentimes than not what chapters associate the annual report with. So the annual report is how determine the chapter awards, the big shiny trophies that we give out every year that hopefully all of our chapters are excited for, will inevitably put on their recruitment tables or up in the house somewhere. We want to make sure that every year it's highly competitive for that. And then as well too, with your annual report as an advisor, to see where maybe some areas of improvement in terms of what events we're attending, chapter council fulfillment, things of that nature. So the annual report for the chapter, where this is going to be found, we started using this new system last year, My Alpha Sig. We're going to be continuing to use it for the annual report. So I took a nice clean screen grab of a chapter here. This can be found in the My Alpha Sig portion. When they click their chapter, they'll see the individual widgets, and you'll see a widget that says accreditation on there. The full term is the annual report for accreditation, so we've just shortened it there. And this is where they go ahead and fill this out. Simple form that they fill out, typing in the different required documents and attachments that are needed, as well as different answers. Again, this can be found on My Alpha Sig. And then the advisor annual report. So the advisor annual report is a little bit shorter, so we keep that simple in a simple WUFU form, the same forms that you all as advisors fill out for your biweekly reports. So this is primarily a reflection of your involvement as you as an advisor. How many chapter meetings and events are we showing up to? Trainings that you've conducted to the chapter, things of that sort. It's sort of a checking off metric at that point. Both of these reports in a basic form can be found on the website under fraternity resources and then annual reports, where you can go ahead and check in. The deadline for both of these are going to be April 15th. If you've noticed, April 15th is a big deadline for many things in life, tax day, and also for us as an organization to get everything clarified and straightened out. And we'll talk about some more deadlines later on. And then finally, I always like to add in some submission and tips and tricks, if you will. The very first thing, like I said, is on April 15th. I think we can all realize that we're working with college age students, and the old adage is if it's due on a certain day, the chapter is going to be submitting it at 11:59 that day. Where we should be coming in as coaches and advisors to these chapters is making sure that we're not waiting to the very last minute to submit this in. So something that we should be recommending to our chapters is to turn in the annual report early for a couple of different reasons. One, you get it done, out of sight, out of mind. You can carry on with the rest of the chapter's business. The second reason is once a chapter submits it on My Alpha Sig, you can actually go back and see it and see the different submissions. So it allows the chapter an opportunity to make some changes if they need be. Maybe they accidentally submitted the wrong attachment. I think at least the 2 years I've been on staff, the number one reason a functioning chapter misses points on the annual report is they've attached the wrong documents to the different submissions. It's kind of hilarious the amount of times that we will get actual homework assignments that are attached to the annual report. So it's a good opportunity to always to review the submission and see if there's any changes that need to be made. But as well, too, again, it allows them to get it done and get it over with. Side note for us personally, acting and working with you, it allows us not to have that very last day. Same thing with the presidents, that very last day to get it turned in. So also another thing that you can go ahead and tell your presidents is, hey, if you don't want us bugging you with a text and when's the day of, we're going to call them until it's submitted, go ahead and submit it early from them at that point. Again, the annual report is really supposed to be just a reflection of what the chapter has done. It's supposed to be a reward for those chapters that are making progress, that are, conducting themselves the proper way. I firmly believe a lot of our chapters are highly functioning chapters of ours. This is just a matter of showing your work and proving that they are a high functioning chapter. And again, we want to have a competitive race when it comes to the awards at the end of the year. And as I always like to tell a lot of my groups, we want to make sure that whether they're flying or driving, that they leave some room in their luggage to bring back something nice and shiny to bring back. So we should always be encouraging our chapters to knock this thing out of the park. And we're excited to see all these submissions. Any questions, comments, concerns about the annual report, your annual report? Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll throw it back to Logan.
Cool. One last thing from Cade.
Thanks, Logan. I will keep this short and sweet since we have talked about it multiple times during this presentation. And I'm also the last thing between yourself and the end of this. So as you can see, we're talking about an election cycle here. Most of you probably already know this are the prudential officers when we talk about the prudential officer cycle, election time period. So the earliest we really want your elections is around that March time frame. You can transition in April. And the reason why we want that transition in April is because of the annual report that Kevin just talked about on April 15th. Even if you do transition April 1st, we still want the outgoing Prudential Board to work with the incoming Prudential Board to complete that because both of them together, it'd be a lot easier to get things together, especially if you've already been collecting that information and also train the new officers as well. So some benefits quickly of the election cycle in the academic year. Annual report, you have that set of officers that have completed the whole year, completing that annual report with the assistance of the new officers. Officer training, one of the first things they'll do as a new prudential officer will be attending either Grand Chapter this year or Elevate next year. So it's a great way to start off their officer term and we'll also continue that education throughout the year doing officer training either through My Alpha Sig or through the Zooms that you may have or the officers may have been receiving emails from Tabitha about as well. They have that transition or learning period during the summer to prep for the upcoming year. So they have a good 2 to 3 months to plan, whereas in previous years in the past, they only had maybe a winter break to prep for taking office in January. And then lastly, one thing that we did a lot of research on was junior and senior involvement. So it gives more opportunities for those juniors and seniors to be involved, take more positions as a prudential officer, And also, if they're involved all the way up until graduation or very close, that means they're hopefully going to be a successful alumnus as well. So this is one of the most critical things. If you can get anything out of this, updating the officers on My Alpha Sig. So that needs to be done by April 15th. It'll be under the officer tab on the My Alpha Sig website. The president needs to go in there and update that as soon as they transition out of that position. That makes sure that not just your supervisor, but also anybody on staff is able to get in contact with the correct officers of your chapter. We don't want to be sending emails. We've had that a couple times where we send emails to the president, and then they get back just 2 to 3 weeks later. It's like, well, I haven't been president for a week or two. So we want to make sure that the communication is clear and effective with your chapters as well. Any questions? I know that's pretty quick, but I felt like we covered a lot about it previously. Well, thank you.
I think one thing to kind of add on to that, if you know your chapter is not on our election cycle or has been thinking about reverting back to how it was 4 years ago, please have a conversation with us. Let's get on a call with the Prudential Board, hear what they're saying, and we can work out something. But ultimately, every chapter needs to be on an academic calendar election cycle. So, like I said, if we need to work something out to make everyone happy, we're happy to do that. But we need to know. I feel like this year we've started to run into a few instances where chapters are just having elections and we're just finding out now. So as long as you guys are having conversations with us about it, we're okay with talking to the chapter and stuff like that. But like I said, just keep us in the know. Just a few housekeeping items before we let you guys go. Spring roundtables are going to start back up in February. So technically this is our January roundtable, but we'll do our next one the week of February 7th, then March 6th and April 3rd. Like I said, I'll send you guys a follow-up email. This will be included on that. But expect your roundtables to happen on that date. And the person who's doing your roundtable, if something comes up, it's still going to be within that week, but expect it to be on that first Wednesday of the upcoming months. Officer trainings also start back up for the spring. The next ones are happening on February 7th and 8th. I believe Tabitha has sent out an email for the spring officer trainings, or no, not yet.
The last email they got was probably at the end of November.
Okay.
So they'll get an email probably 10 to 14 days out. So, but they got all the spring dates when I've been sending out constant information about the training. But I think any reminders that you can do would be much appreciated because there's still a lot of officers that need hours.
And then also another deadline that's coming up for April 15th or March 15th with Grand Chapter is nominating people for awards and scholarships. That's all done in the portal where you can register for Grand Chapter. So nominating people for Hall of Fame, that could definitely be something that you as an advisor does with anyone that is graduating this year. Nominating someone for Hall of Fame. You can nominate someone for Sonder, which is our advisor of the year. If you want to nominate yourself, I guess you could. You could also nominate for DBX, Delta Beta Xi, and there's a bunch of other awards on there. And then if there's any undergrads or potential undergrads that are going to go into grad school, they can apply for scholarships in the portal as well. So I'll just do a quick share screen. So it's in that same area in the portal, that welcome page. So the grand chapter registration, and then you have the award applications, and then the scholarship applications here. You guys all have access to that. Undergrads have access to that. So you guys could definitely show them as we approach that deadline. And then just one quick note for your guys' sake, we're actually going to stop doing the fall planning and spring planning on a semesterly basis. We're actually going to start just doing a full year planning starting in April, and we plan for the whole school year. Obviously, we can have conversations coming up in the end of fall to talk about the spring, but I think with how we want billing to go, we should really just start focusing on a year-round plan for budgeting and recruitment and everything like that. I think it'll make your guys' life easier, so you're not focused on that twice a year. It's just one time a year. You guys will get more information about that, but just wanted to clue you guys in now. So well, thank you all for coming to the call. If there's any other questions, feel free to stay on. I'll stay on for a little longer, answer any of those questions, but appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of your night and have a great spring semester.